I think it's safe to say that what most people think of when they think of sample and hold is something like this, just the output going to the pitch of a VCO. So this module can do all that stuff, but it can do a lot more. It's got its own built-in analog noise source and a colour control to control the tone of the noise. So in a central position it's just like regular noise. It's got a mix of very high and very low frequencies and all points in between. And it's periodically taking samples of those frequencies to generate voltage. But as I turn the colour control anti-clockwise, it acts like a low pass filter and starts to remove the higher frequencies. As it does so, it's only getting low frequencies from which to generate voltages, so the results are going to be a lot further down the register, and there'll be much less range between them. If you turn the control the other way, it acts like a high pass filter, then it will remove all the lower frequencies. So the results that you'll get will be predominantly higher. It also has a restrict function. The restrict function limits the distance that each voltage that's output from the module can be from the previous voltage. So at the moment you can hear it's varying wildly. It's going from one extreme to another. As I apply restrict, it limits the distance the changes can travel. So now the difference between the voltages is increasingly less and less until it sounds like it's hardly going anywhere, just a subtle wobble. Over the course of time it will wander up and down because it's still completely random what direction it goes. It's just that the distance that it will change, the amount by which it will change, is greatly restricted. Track and hold is similar to sample and hold in that it alternates between taking samples of the noise source and using it to generate a voltage. But on the flip side, also tracking the noise source directly and turning it into voltages. And it's probably easy to understand by hearing it. If I slow the rate down. As the light goes off, it's behaving like a normal sample and hold. It's just grabbing a frequency and converting it into a voltage. When the light comes on, it's directly converting all those frequencies that's coming from the noise into voltages that's, in this case, modulating the pitch of the VCO. Speed it up. You can switch the noise to Eclipse mode, which basically produces much more extreme results from the noise source. Slew works as a slew function in its own right, so you could connect the output from a keyboard to the pitch of a VCO and use it to generate slides between one note and another, or from the output from a sequencer, the pitch output. But obviously as part of the sample and hold module, it will affect the output, it will affect the changes between the one voltage to the next. It also has, slow it down a bit, slew up and slew down function, so you can choose whether you want it to slide up to a note, only slide up to a note, but not down, or vice versa. So if I select slew up, so it's only engaging the slew when it has to rise to a higher voltage or a higher pitch. The slew also has a linear and exponential switch. In linear mode, the changes in the voltages will be very even, smooth and constant. It will be like just one line drawn between each of the voltage changes. This is very predictable, stable, constant change from one value to the next. With exponential, if you imagine linear looking like a straight line, exponential will be more like an S shape. So it will gradually, as it changes from one voltage to the next, it will start to accelerate. The rate of change will start to accelerate, and then it will taper off just before it gets to its final destination. And put that on. There's also a slew gate input, and what that allows you to do is turn the slew on and off. So you could have the output from a sequencer just turning the slew function on at certain points in the sequence, and it's also got an invert as well, so that when the gate is high, in the up position, when the gate is high, it will turn the slew off, and when you invert it, it'll be the other way around. I would find this particularly useful if I was using a keyboard to play a solo and I wanted to slide between particular notes. If I was using a momentary switch, each time I hold that momentary switch down, it would engage the slew function and allow me to slide between one note to the next, and then just by letting go I'd go back to normal, changing immediately from one note to another. Lastly, it's got a clock input, so you can use, this is a really obvious example, I'll use a square wave from an LFO. So now the speed of the sample and hold is governed by the LFO. That's particularly useful if I wanted to use the LFO to trigger an envelope, for example. And I also wanted to use the sample and hold to control the frequency of the filter. Then I'll be able to keep them both in perfect time because they'll both be controlled by the clock on the LFO. And probably the way I use it more often is with a sequencer, using the gate output to control the clock speed of the sample and hold, and then the sample and hold controlling the frequency of the filter. There's an example of this later in the video, and I find that's really good for creating a kind of rhythmic or tonal variation in a pattern on a sequence. It's just something that I find sounds very pleasing. The module has its own internal analog noise source, and it's actually slightly different from the noise that's in the glide and noise module, so that might be useful if you've got that module as well. But I'll disconnect the audio from the VCO and give you an example of what it sounds like. And the colour control, rotate it anti-clockwise, it applies low pass filtering to the noise. Taking off the high frequencies, and then in the opposite direction applies high pass filtering, taking out the lower frequencies. You've also got a sample input, so you can use other sources for the sample and hold to generate voltages from. It doesn't have to be white noise or pink noise, it can be any audio signal. I've got a radio music module here with a sample looping, and I'm going to use that as the source into the sample input. So it doesn't really sound much different at the moment. It's just a slightly different range of frequencies that it's collecting from the raw material, some higher frequencies for example. But the thing that's really interesting is you can use this as a kind of audio processor, like a downsampling kind of effect. So first of all, if I give an example of what the audio sounds like from the radio music, plugging that into the filter. That's my raw audio signal from radio music. And if I take that out, use that as the sample input, take the output from the sample and hold to the input of the filter. You can't hear much at the moment. You increase the rate. So it's made a crunchy version of the audio, and I can use restrict as well. Colour won't have any function because you're not using the internal noise anymore. It gives it an even stronger bit crushing effect. You can even experiment with the slew because I'm coming out of the slew output.